Welcome back to another video in our Carl video series. My name is Rob from Ahead Simulations, and today we're going to be walking you through how to create your own audiogram inside of Carl Pro. So the screen that you see right now, this is where you land when you first boot up the Carl Pro software. We are currently in the audiograms portion, and what you'll see on the left is all the audiograms that are currently in your Carl Pro. This includes both preloaded and standardized audiograms that we include with Carl from factory, as well as any audiograms that you may have created or a colleague of yours may have created inside of your Carl Pro. If some of the preloaded audiograms don't quite make sense to you, don't worry about it at all. We can edit and change those or even delete them if we want, and we can really set up your Carl Pro to have the audiograms that are most relevant for you and your training and learning. So, to first get into the Create an Audiogram screen, we're going to go into the admin portal. You can see up at the top right is the admin, and it asks for a password. For me, the password is AudioCarl. Your password may differ. Just make sure that either on your Chromebook there should be a label for it or it was provided to you in the documentation. When I click Login, we are now inside of the admin portal. So you'll see instead of the header bar that was there before, we just have audiograms and playlists. We can exit admin, and here is the list again with the option to create an audiogram. So first, before we jump into creating an audiogram, I'm just going to do a quick example of looking at one of the preloaded audiograms that are in here. Example 1 is actually one that I created not too long ago inside of my own Carl Pro. And when I click that, it gives me the option to modify this existing audiogram. So I can see all the details. It was an unmasked audiogram. There was the name. When I click Next, it tells me what all the values in it were. If I look in and I decide, you know what, I don't really want this living in my Carl. I want to, delete a bunch of them so that there's only a few audiograms that I really care about in here. It is as simple as clicking delete, and it is gone from the list. So you can really set up the audiogram list however you wish. So now we're going to create our own audiogram. We're going to replace that example 1 with our own. In the description, you can use this as a description so you can better identify what this audiogram is when you're searching for it. What we've also seen is that a description can actually be used as a bit of a case study too. So you can see the top masking cases here. We've used this description as a case study approach. And the idea there is when you go to test someone's hearing inside of clinic, you're going to know a little bit about them before you test their hearing. So you'll know, do they have hearing aids already? Are they having a lot of trouble hearing on their right side? And these clues will help you better test their hearing and do it quicker and more efficiently. So again, that's an option for the description. I'm just going to leave it blank for this example. When I click Next, you'll then see that there's the audiogram plot, which I can plot the audiogram of my choosing. There is a gray region here, and you'll see when I hover over it, it says Carl may not respond properly here. This directly corresponds with the calibration settings that you had when you calibrated your Carl. So in the calibration feature, it records or it measures your noise floor and your environment, and it tells you what is the mildest hearing loss that I can give Carl while Carl still responds properly. That's exactly what the shaded region is doing. So in my calibration, I found 15 dBHL as my noise floor or my highest noise floor throughout the frequencies. This is just reminding me here, so if I place a threshold below this, it's not likely that Carl is going to respond properly. So I want to create a pretty easy case here. You can see you can collect or you can select whatever frequencies you want. You can focus on the octaves, which are a little bit darker than the interoctaves. You can have a little bit of each. Create it however you wish. You just need at least a threshold or two in order to save the audiogram. And you'll also notice, just a quick note about all the audiograms that are in Carl already, all of these will have octaves and interoctaves in them. When you're creating your own audiogram, you can do whatever you wish. So I just click the graph to place all those thresholds. In the left ear, I'm going to actually type it in, and you can see it's just two different ways that you can input data to create an audiogram. So there we go. I'm going to click save, successfully save example 1, and now you see example 1 in the list. It's as easy as that. The next case is a little bit more complicated, and that's when you create a masked audiogram. So same thing here. I'm going to put in a new name, but you'll see when I click next, it's a little bit different of a screen. So it's going to ask you to add audiogram's value for the better ear first. Which ear do you want as the better ear? In this example, I'll do the right ear, and I'm going to put in just a bunch of very simple values. They may not be terribly clinically, but just as an example. When I'm happy with this for my better ear, I can click next. And this gives you the information so that you can appropriately make your masking case. So the first most obvious thing you see is there's now the shaded region below all of the thresholds that I placed for my better ear. This shaded region is the intraoral attenuation of Carl based on the transducer that I have selected. So you can see on the transducer I am currently calibrated to an insert phone. And so this is the intraoral attenuation values that Carl has for insert phones. And as I change the transducer, you'll see the intraoral attenuation changes quite a bit. A quick note on Carl's intraoral attenuation, you'll notice these values are not the exact training standards that you may have been taught. You know, some places their training standards are for insert phones. If there's a difference between the left and the right ear of 70 dB or greater, then you need to mask. For circumoral and supraoral, that may be 40 dBHL, and Carl's doesn't quite match up to that. That is because the training standards are made to be a conservative estimate to make sure that you are masking mainly more than you need to make sure you're getting the correct thresholds for the patient. Also, intraoral attenuation varies person to person and human to human. And so those values are taken into account to cover the variance that you'll see inside of clinic. When we created Carl and fine-tuned the intraoral attenuation, we wanted Carl to be as realistic and average as a patient as you'll see as possible. So when we did our literature review, we found that all the values that are represented here in the shaded region, this is the average intraoral attenuation of humans that you will see in clinic. Next step I'll walk you through is the test type. So when you're doing a masked audiogram case inside of Carl Pro, there's two different options that you can set it up as. You can set it up as a complete audiogram with masking. And what this is it sets up a clinical case in which you need to diagnose and test Carl's hearing for both unmasked thresholds and masked thresholds. So Carl's a patient, you don't know anything about them, you don't have any data other than potentially a case study in the description, and you need to go through a whole unmasked test, determine which frequencies may require masking, and then mask appropriately. The masked threshold only, you receive all of the unmasked thresholds in advance. So there is no need to go through a full pure tone test with Carl when you're using this mask threshold only. It is guided so when you want to purely focus on the competency of masking, most likely you are pretty familiar with doing a regular unmasked case. So we're going to skip you right to a masked threshold only, where all you need to do in this mode is look at the unmasked thresholds on the left and right ear, determine which frequencies need masking, and then mask appropriately. So again, more of a clinical case, you have to test Carl's hearing from the ground up, and this is you get unmasked ahead of time and you only need to test whichever frequencies you decide require masking. So I'm going to set my thresholds here for the worse ear. And as I go along, I'm just going to do another case here. Very simple. And what you'll notice right away is that when you place this icon, it changes dynamically, whether it's in the shaded region or not. So you can see right here that's an X when it's in, because Carl's crossover, you're not going to hear this in the better ear. As soon as I move over that, it moves to a mask icon. So that just gives you the information so that you can choose appropriately and that you can be aware ahead of time of which frequencies may require masking when someone goes to test it. So this is going to be our easy case. I can even go over to a different transducer, and you can see in the circumoral and the supraoral, masking is required at every frequency, whereas the insert, it's not. So again, differences in transducer and being able to teach that. When I click Save, you'll see that example showed up here, and you can identify that it's a masking only case because only the masked icons are colored. The unmasked audiogram, we had placed just the thresholds without any masking required, and you can see only the unmasked icons are colored. And then, of course, you guessed it, both of them colored means that it's a complete audiogram where they have to test both. So that was creating two different types of audiograms. We're still in the admin portal here. So I'm going to go to the top right, and I'm going to exit admin. And when I go back over to the audiograms, you'll see here's my two cases. I can click it. This is the unmasked case. I can do all my thresholds. Yikes, that's not very good looking. Anyways, I can place all my thresholds, test Carl's hearing, and then after I'm confident, finish. And you can see these were the exact thresholds that we gave to Carl when creating an audiogram, and it shows when someone's actually testing that audiogram how far off they are. So that's my walkthrough of how to create an audiogram in Carl. Be sure to check out our other videos for more functionality of the Carl Pro, and by all means, please feel free to reach out to a member of our team if there's any other questions.